This morning with Senator John McCain. Senator McCain, you want an investigation, a bipartisan investigation. The president-elect says that this notion of Russians trying to be involved in the election is ridiculous. What do you make of that disconnect?
I don't know what to make of it because it's clear the Russians interfered. Now, whether they intended to interfere to the degree that they were trying to elect a certain candidate, I think that's a subject of investigation. But the facts are stubborn things. They did hack into this campaign, and they did it, I think, with some, at least what seemed to be effective, of a sort of every week or so there was new information. And were they hacking the Republicans the same way, the Republican National Committee? And if so, why didn't they? There's a whole lot of issues out there. It requires an investigation. The president has ordered an investigation for that. You're not going to find all this out in the next month between administrations. It's fine with me if he starts an investigation, but it's going to require congressional involvement. It's going to require in-depth, and by the way, the Russians have interfered in a lot of other elections. The Russians have hacked into some of our most secret military information. The Russians have been active using it as a tool, as part of Vladimir Putin's ambition to regain Russian prominence and dominance in some parts of the world.
So your point is both there is specific evidence that points you to this conclusion, and then there's a broader pattern of behavior that the Russians have been a part of.
And they have hacked. They have, in the case of a little country called Estonia, they basically shut down their economy for a while. They have intervened. Here's a fundamental fact that we may get to this later on. Vladimir Putin is a thug and a murderer and a killer, and a KGB agent. He had Boris Nemtsov murdered in the shadow of the Kremlin. He has dismembered the Ukraine. He has now precision strikes by Russian aircraft on hospitals in Aleppo. Let's call Vladimir Putin for what he is. Does that mean you don't deal with him or talk to him? Of course you talk to him, but you do it the same way that Ronald Reagan did, and that's from a position of strength. And by the way, the Congress of the United States is not acting very responsibly on that issue, which is the subject of another encounter with us, between us. Based
on what you've heard the President-elect say about Russia, he doesn't seem to share your view of Russia and speaking about it plainly. If speaking about it plainly is really the starting position in your case, then what do you say to the President-elect about his view of Russia?
I say I hope that he will listen to people like General Mattis, for example, his appointee to the Secretary of Defense. I hope that he would call people that he respects and who the American people respect, and get the facts. The facts are there about Russian behavior and Russian, not just hacking into the United States 2016 election campaign, but throughout the world. Vladimir Putin and the Chinese, by the way, and other rogue states view cyber as a form of warfare. And by the way, according to the testimony of our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others, that's the area, cyber, that we are not ahead, do not have an advantage over our adversaries. Nor, by the way, does the Obama administration have a policy or a strategy in this whole issue of cyber warfare.
Trump on Russia meddling in U.S. election. I don't believe it. Washington. AFP. President-elect Donald Trump dismissed a brewing storm over Russian cyber meddling in the U.S. election, rejecting as ridiculous. U.S. intelligence reports that Moscow tried to help him win the White House. I don't believe it, Trump said in a pre-recorded interview that was broadcast Sunday on Fox News. I think it's ridiculous, Trump said, putting it down as an attempt by Democrats to find an excuse for their embarrassing election loss. In the interview, Trump touched on other issues, questioning U.S. commitment to the One China policy without concessions from Beijing, and hailing Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson, who is under consideration for Secretary of State, as a world-class player. But the controversy over the latest U.S. intelligence consensus on Russia and Trump's skepticism of the findings dominated the conversation at a time of deepening political divisions over how to respond to the hacking attacks. Two top Republican senators, John McCain and Lindsey Graham, joined leading Democrats Sunday in calling for greater public disclosure about recent cyber attacks that have cut to the heart of our free society. This cannot become a partisan issue. The stakes are too high for our country, they said in a joint statement with Chuck Schumer, the incoming Democratic leader in the Senate, and Jack Reed, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee. They pledged to work across party lines to have the incidents investigated, but other Republicans said the evidence does not support the conclusions that the Russian meddling was aimed at helping Trump. Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, said the hacking was definitely the work of the Russians. This was not China. This wasn't a 400-pound guy in New Jersey or anyone else, Schiff said, mocking similar comments Trump has made. This was the Russians. Trump's willingness to disregard the intelligence community's overwhelming evidence was extraordinarily damaging, he said. CIA finding. U.S. intelligence has previously linked Russia to leaks of damaging emails from Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton's campaign, but saw it as a broad bid to undermine confidence in the U.S. political process. On Friday, however, The Washington Post reported that the CIA has since concluded that the aim of the cyber intrusions was to help Trump win the election. The New York Times quoted senior administration officials as saying there was high confidence that the Russians hacked both the Democratic and Republican national committees, but leaked only documents damaging to Clinton through WikiLeaks. Reince Priebus, the Republican National Committee chairman and Trump's incoming White House chief of staff, said the FBI had investigated and told the RNC it had not been hacked. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has denied links with Russia's government. Trump dismissed the intelligence reports, asserting there is great confusion over the issue within the spy agencies. Nobody really knows, he said. They have no idea if it's Russia or China or somebody. It could be somebody sitting in a bed someplace. They have no idea. Trump suggested he had little confidence in the U.S. intelligence agencies and would clean house once in office. We're going to have different people coming in because we have our people, they have their people. Trump has kept the U.S. intelligence community at arm's length since his election, pointedly eschewing their daily briefing on world threats. I get it when I need it, he said. You know, I'm a smart person. I don't have to be told the same thing and the same words every single day for the next 8 years. Exxon chief for state? Moscow's motives have drawn attention in part because Trump has often praised Russian President Vladimir Putin as a strong leader, ignoring his actions in Ukraine and Syria. Trump, who was expected to name a Secretary of State this week, is reported to have settled on Rex Tillerson, the Exxon chief, as his top choice. Tillerson's close ties to Putin have raised concerns among some lawmakers, but Trump sees the oil executive's Russian dealings as a plus. In his case, he's much more than a business executive. He's a world-class player, Trump said of the 64-year-old Texan, who has run Exxon since 2006. To me, a great advantage is he knows many of the players. And he knows them well. He does massive deals in Russia. He does massive deals for the company, not for himself, he said. McCain expressed concern that Tillerson was too close to Putin, and told CBS Face the Nation that the deals they have done together would color his approach to Vladimir Putin and the Russian threat. Raw nerve. On China, Trump touched a raw nerve by questioning whether the United States should continue its One China policy without concessions from Beijing on trade and other issues, threatening to upend decades of Sino-American diplomacy. I don't want China dictating to me, Trump said as he made a vehement defense of his recent phone conversation with the president of Taiwan. I don't know why we have to be bound by a One China policy unless we make a deal with China having to do with other things, including trade, he added. He was responding to a question about taking a call earlier this month from Tsai Ing-wen, the leader of Taiwan, a self-ruling island that Beijing considers a rogue province awaiting unification. It was a break from decades of U.S. diplomatic tradition that recognizes Beijing as the sole representative of China, an understanding that has been a cornerstone of the relationship between the countries since Richard Nixon went to China in 1972.